Last time we drew it kind of just to look at it. Today we're going to draw it a little bit more officially. We're going to draw the third line of defense a little bit more officially. So the third line of defense is called the specific immunity. And off to the side, it's called the third line of defense. And another name given for it is acquired. Because you acquire this type of immunity every time you see a new pathogen. That's why you got to eat dirt when you're a kid, so that you're exposed to these things and you can acquire immunities to different pathogens. Recognize the specific foreign substances, so we're going to just draw some run-of-the-mill bacteria. And everything on the board is going to be fighting that particular type of bacteria. So there's going to be three parts. There's going to be the T cells, TC cells, TH cells, and the B cells. And all of them are looking for one particular target. And this entire system has got nothing on another type of pathogen. So the specific immune system can recognize E. coli from TB, from rhinovirus like the cold virus. What it's going to do is mobilize, immobilize, neutralize, and destroy the target. We'll talk about that later. It also amplifies the inflammatory response, and it activates complement. It's going to get a little bit choppy here to get going, but we'll start drawing it. But just pointing out that there's two main parts of this. This is what's called the cell-mediated. And this part essentially attacks cells that have already been infected. So those are cells, the red little circles are cells that have been infected by the purple bacteria. You have another system in case that bacteria is still floating around in the fluid of the body. And this was called the antibody-mediated because it's going to kill with antibodies. Or it's called the humoral because you're attacking things still in the fluid. I'm going to use a little bit different order than I did last time, but hopefully it'll come together. And just point out the different cells or different elements here. There's what are called T cells. We're going to focus on two, mention three. There's a TC cell, where the C stands for cytotoxic. And sometimes in science, two different groups will find the same type of cell right around the same time and name it differently. Like if one group finds it way before the other one, the first group gets to name it. But if two groups find the same cell around the same time, sometimes it gets two names, and both names stick. So the TC cell is also called a CD8 cell. It's a TH cell. Here the H stands for helper. Or the other name for this is a CD4. If you go on Wikipedia or you go on other sources, you're going to find lots of T cells. I'm going to mention this one. It's a suppressor because it's been implicated in autoimmune disorders where the immune system attacks self. The theory is that this guy kind of keeps these guys under control, keeps the lid on them when there's not a real threat. Because if it doesn't do that, then these will start attacking cells. So the TS cell is fairly important in doing that, at least in theory. Another cell that we're going to get on the board is a B lymphocyte. What I'm drawing here are little antibodies that stick on the outside of the B lymphocyte. One of the first things to point out is where these cells coming from. Well, they're all made in bone, but they mature in other areas. Leave a little space here because we'll define antigen up here. But then we're going to write T cells mature in thymus. T cells mature in bone. There's a couple of reasons to point that out. First of all, if you have a problem with the thymus, or you have a problem with the bone, then that's going to affect this part of the immune system. So if you have cancer in your bones or something like that, that's going to affect your specific immunity. Or another example is your thymus tends to shrink with age. And so as the thymus goes away, your immune system sort of goes away. It gets weaker as you get older. And that's why, is because your thymus shrinks away. You can't make T cells anymore. The other thing just to point out is this is what your thymus does. Your thymus doesn't really have any other function other than to mature T lymphocytes. That's what's shown in this figure from your book. Essentially all blood cells are made in bone marrow. We're specifically talking about lymphocytes, which are also produced in bone marrow. B lymphocytes stay in bone and mature there. T lymphocytes move to the thymus and mature there. They both then meet up essentially in the lymph node. That's where most of your lymphocytes are going to be hanging out. Let's define what we're actually targeting here. And a simple definition is an antigen is what your immune system targets. And an antigen is anything the immune system does target. Seems fairly obvious, if not circular. What does the immune system target? An antigen. What's an antigen? Anything the immune system targets. But there's some more detail to that, because what you specifically want to target is something that's large, complex, and not normally found in the body. So there's two little nuggets of information there. First of all, you want it to be large and complex. Large and complex implies that it could be alive, that it might replicate itself like a virus or a bacteria. You don't want to attack just some chemical that can't replicate itself. That's a waste of your resources. So you want it to be large and complex so that it's actually a threat to you. You also don't want to attack self, so you only want to attack molecules not normally found in the body. And that's just what's outlined down here. There's no use for attacking something small and simple, because that's not a threat. Complete antigens include foreign proteins, lipids, large polysaccharides, things like that. I do want to take a little caveat, though, to explain this, which is, in general, you want your target, your antigens, to be large enough to be of a threat to you. But sometimes a mistake is made. So let's imagine that a pollen molecule, a lot of people are allergic to pollen. Technically, that's too small for an antibody to cling to. So in general, something has to be big enough for an antibody to bind both of its legs on. If it's too small, the immune system should not attack it. That means it's too small to be a threat. But sometimes these small molecules, which are called haptens, can bind to other proteins in the body, and now they're big enough for an antibody to bind. Does anyone developed an allergy later in life? Yeah, like what? Ragweed? Ragweed? Yeah, me, poison ivy. When I was a kid, my dad would send me to all the fence lines and say, clear that out, because I could walk through poison ivy and nothing would happen. Then I got to be about 18, and then poison ivy started, and now I can't be anywhere near poison ivy. It just rolls all over. And the reason is, early on, poison ivy is technically too small to be attacked by an antibody, but it finds a carrier molecule, binds to something else in your body, on your skin in this case, and now it's big enough for the immune system to find it and react to it. So you can still develop allergies later in life. You're just waiting for something like this to happen. That's also the theory of why all of a sudden your immune system starts to attack itself. Because your immune system won't attack something itself, but if it binds to something else that makes it change its shape a little bit or look a little bit different, all of a sudden the immune system will recognize it as different and will attack it. Other examples of Haptens, I use poison ivy, ragweed would be an example, dander, detergents, cosmetics. So things that should be too small to activate the immune response combine to something else as an end. Okay, so let's keep going with this specific immunity. I got these on the board already. I'll talk about these MHCs next. or major histocompatibility complexes. So you can either write these off to the side, like they're written off to the side on here, or you can do it the way I did before. I'll probably do them both. MHC1 found on all cells with a nucleus. And MHC2 found on antigen presenting cells.